A journey into the underground with Adam X. Sonic Room Podcast. Hi, I'm Adam X, and on today's show, I'm excited to share my conversation with the Baron of Techno himself, Dave Clarke. I sat down with Dave in Amsterdam, and we had an amazing chat about all things techno. We delved into his life as DJ, producer, radio show host, reflecting on both the present and past. Additionally, we took some time to discuss the various controversies affecting the techno scene in the world today. It's an episode you won't want to miss. How did you wind up making music? When did you start making music? When did you get your first drum machines, first gear?
Okay. Oh, it's a long story. So I first got my drum machines by paying like £10 a month or £5 a week or something to this weird fucking shop that opened up around the corner from my mother's, right? Really bizarre. I don't know why. And I lived near my mother's at the time in a bedsit. And it was at the back of a newsagent. I don't know if you guys know what newsagents are in America, but basically it's a shop that used to sell like sweets, tobacco, and newspapers. And in the back of the newsagent, obviously used to be a storeroom. This guy took it over for some reason, I don't know, in the middle of Hove, which is not happening at all, and set up a Yamaha bloody keyboard shop with drum machines and 4-tracks and amplifiers. To me, it's still a mystery. It's like someone said, Dave lives near here, tempt him. And so he set up there, and then I decided that I wanted to buy some drum machines, but I didn't have the money for it, so I go in there every now and then with a little bit of money. And I remember that the RX21 was £110. So I went in there like drip feeding, like, because I wanted to do it, so he'd mark it off that I paid this amount. He got so fed up with me that after like £60 of the 110, he said, fucking have the drum machine, just leave me alone. And then I looked at him and went, you have an RX21L as well. Can I put £10 on that? And he was like, oh, for fuck's sake. And I did the same. And then after like £70, like he let me go, look, just take the fucking drum machine, don't come back. And so I had 2 drum machines for the price of one. And then I learned that the RX21 was actually used by Mantronics in his remix of, I think, Tila Rock, Breaking Bells. And then I found, it was the beginning of finding presets. And I found, I think it was drum pattern 55 or 56, with Breaking Bells, which Chep Nunez really edited really well.
This is like 85, 1985, 1986?
No, this was about 87 or so. Or 85, maybe 80, I don't know. It was mid-late 80s. And I thought, oh, wow, so you can actually just do presets and music as well, which I didn't want to do. But I worked out how to do that, and I was trying to link them together. I had an old computer called a BBC-B, which was a basic computer, so you had to program everything in envelope commands, and had a flash memory, so when you switched off it, the 32K completely just went, and then you have to load it in again. And then some friends managed to find a software for it called Umi, which sounds like an amazing Japanese sea urchin, but it's with an M. And I tried that, and it was really, really difficult. And I started to segue my own sequences, but it wasn't good enough. And I felt that although I already had the samples that I wanted to use, and then eventually I managed to get an Atari 1040 ST, which had incredible timing, as we all know, for ages and ages. I think it was like 10 years before any computer could actually have that MIDI timing, which is crazy because it's only 33.6 kilobaud per second. But the timing was really, really good. And I managed to put some music together on a sampler, and then that's how I did my first track, which came out on Excel, I think, in 1989, 1990.
Which would be Hardcore I Like John, right? Or was it?
No, it was Hardcore I Like John with the B-side Get a Little Stupid. Of course, you can't get it now because in those days everyone sampled everything, as your brother will clearly know.
Of course,
allegedly.
We all did,
possibly. So I was sampling things. I called it I Like John because it sampled John Lydon, and I thought if I call it I Like John, then nothing's going to go wrong. And then on the B-side was Get a Little Stupid, which sampled the drum break from Brooklyn Funk Essentials, which was Arthur Baker, and I used loads of hip hop stuff. But it was the beginning. He didn't know what the rules were or anything, and that kind of made it exciting. So yeah, that was my first single, which went to #1 in the Gallup chart actually in the UK, because it was deemed as an album because it was longer than 12 minutes or something.
Yeah, that was actually a pretty big record, the first one I remember. Yeah, it was
because it got me signed to R&S because Renat really liked it. He did like the front cover in brown, which is not my favorite color at all, of like this little kid with like a Bible looking, only perverted in the way that apparently can happen in Belgium. And I really thought, wow, this is cool. And then he invited me over after Hey, Are You Ready to record Directional Force.
Yeah, it's weird because I never knew that this hardcore came out on RNS until the advent of the internet and Discogs and stuff like that, right? Because back then, you know, records were territorial, right? Like the labels and stuff. And I think even you might have told me back in the early 90s that it came out on RNS, but I actually only really seen a cover of it a few years ago. I was like, oh, this is what the cover looks like.
I was so proud of that, because I was in the studio. It's the first time I've been abroad for like making music, and I haven't been abroad that much. Abroad to Americans means actually going with your passport to another country. So it's the first time I'd really been abroad. And I remember Renat picking me up and then driving me what I felt was really, really fast in an Audi. And all the motorways were basically made out of airport slabs because they could take the bridges off, so B-52 bombers could land if they needed to. And I just remember going all the way to Ghent, never been to Ghent, and was blown away. And then at the same time, he was talking on the phone to Joe Beltram. I think I heard Energy Flash for the first time, and I was like, holy fuck, this is amazing. So it's just the gestation period of the whole scene of all of a sudden globalization, everything coming together, like, so Americans, English, Belgians, of course, with CJ and Marcus Salon, everything coming together. And it's like, wow, I'm in this, and it's actually really happening right now. First time that I saw an 808 in real life. Was really disappointed when I saw it because I thought it looked really weird. Because to me, it always sounded like this outer space machine. And then I saw it as like, oh, okay. First time I could manage to change my voice, because I think they had like an Eventide harmonizer, and then I could sound like my heroes, like on Trax records, like Hercules and all those things, like the deeper voice, like Directional Force. You know, stuff like that. It was just fun.
So that is you on the record?
Yeah, it's me.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wasn't
a way to change MIDI technology.
And did any of those guys engineer for you, or you just went in there and did your own thing?
Well, no, I mean, they rented the sampler in for me, and of course the Atari 1040 I already knew. I was using at that time eMagic Notator. But I had to use Cubase at that time a little bit, so I needed a little bit of help of working with that, because Cubase was much similar to what we're working with now with like Cubase and Logic. In those days, Notator was like split across two screens, a bit like Ableton, I suppose. And then you had to use like commands like P-user4 and P-user5 to mute things, and because the MIDI wasn't so good, you'd have to put notes in at certain points. So if you wanted your bass drum to be super tight, you'd write it as 1.1.1.1 beginning of the bar, and then I'd always layer my bass drum, so I then have like a slightly more sub-bassy bass drum, and that'd be on 1.1.1.2, and this is how I had to work. But no, I had like Marcus Salon, Outlander vamp, who I still see from time to time.
I actually just talked to him the other day, 2 days ago.
So I still see him from time to time. In fact, the last time I saw him was in Antwerp about 12 weeks ago for a really cool party, and he was there with his wife. He normally brings me chocolates. By the way, Marcus, if you watch this, I don't eat chocolates anymore, sorry, but thank you for all the chocolates. I really appreciate them. But Marcus was wonderful, like a really nice guy to be in the studio with. And then Renat and Sabine really looked after me. I always joke it's the first time that I saw more than one type of bread, because in the UK you only got Mother's Pride white bread, and then you go to Europe and it's like, who's all this for? Who else is coming? No, it's just us. But you have 4 different types of bread and ham and salami and stuff. Who else is coming? No, it's just for us. And I was like, oh, okay. And the funny thing about going to R&S was that because I couldn't really afford very much, I couldn't afford very much at all. So the clothes I had were ex-military clothes that you used to buy at the army surplus. And I went to R&S with a military shirt on, but we didn't have Wikipedia in those days. And we didn't have the internet in those days, just ARPANET, but we didn't have any internet. So I couldn't look up, what is the flag of Belgium? So I went there with my shirt on thinking, yeah, I'm down with these Belgians. And it was a German flag. So I just couldn't afford anything, you know. And I still remember the smell of these secondhand clothes. You can never get rid of the soul of dead people. It's just impossible.
Oh shit. So let's go back to DJing. When you were DJing before you were making records, right? You were DJ
Yeah.
first,
So
right?
I was DJing in the very, very early days. So I was actually DJing like Kenny Dope. I was DJing in roller discos. And I got fired from the roller disco because I had smoke and strobes. I had a 2,000 watt argon strobe machine. All the people, it was mostly foreign students, which I hate the word foreign, but it was mostly students from other countries. But they were called foreign students in those days before we became woke. So the students from other countries were coming into the UK, and they all took off their roller skates and started dancing. And then I got sacked and said, well, this doesn't work for us because everyone's dancing and they're not actually roller skating, so you had to go. So I started off in a roller disco. Of course, I did a few friends' weddings before and birthday parties and stuff like that. And then eventually I got into doing some clubs. And yeah, that would have been like mid-80s.
And then what was your introduction to the rave scene? Did you play in the early raves at all in
No, I
England at
was
all?
completely excluded because the politics of dancing, so many cliques and so many things happened that I wasn't allowed to go and play in these places at all. And my clubbing work dried up because everyone was like, well, fuck this. Why have we got to go out at 1 o'clock, end up in a fight and then go home? Why don't we just stay out all night and go raving? But the music I felt, not always, because I've seen some videos of Stearns, but the music that I felt at the really, really big raves was really cheesy and really, really commercial. I mean, I know that Frankie was coming over then because I think he was playing at the Savannah, because I remember Just As Long As I Got You came out. I remember him going down the stairs to Savannah on a TV program or something, and that was really interesting. But that was club life. But the big raves, it didn't really interest me because the music was really cheesy and it seemed mostly about money. So my work dried up, and that's why I got into producing music seriously, because I had to do something. Otherwise I was going to go crazy.
Yeah, because techno wasn't really even a thing yet at that point, like in 88, 89. It wasn't really even, the terminology wasn't even called techno. It was, they were playing like, CNC Music Factory, like not necessarily that track, but more commercial stuff at the
Yeah, but
raves, right?
Clavilles and Cole
Like
also did
Black
some
Box and stuff like that.
Clavilles and Cole were also doing some fucking incredible edit, chopped up sort of Chet Nunez style stuff. It was really, really cool. I mean, back in the 80s, I was actually DJing with True Mathematics and the Jungle Brothers at the Zap Club. And then I forgot I played at a hip hop jam because I used to love hip hop, and I still did up until I think about 2005. I mean, I remember when I was in New York playing like Old Dirty Bastard to you guys, and you were telling me how you felt about it. And so I was playing acid house at a hip hop jam and getting cans thrown at me, which I thought was brilliant. I thought it was really cool. Everyone doing the buffalo stance like this, but then they had to get out of the buffalo stance to actually find a can to throw at me. So I already broke their cool, and I felt like I'm winning friends and influencing people here. But I found it a little bit tough, and then so I made the music, and then I mean, techno was a thing there, but maybe it was more of a thing through electro, because electro is really quite linked in. And also, for me, I mean, okay, techno was a sort of made up term by Network Records. But for me, it sort of existed beforehand with like some of the dubs from like MD3, Mike Dunn. Some of his stuff was, to me, techno, even though it didn't have the name techno. Steve Poindexter was techno, even though it didn't have the name techno.
But there wasn't really like a focus at the parties at that time where people were just playing this kind of music till probably 1990, I would say, right?
No, because even then I was like mixing and matching. So I'd be playing stuff like that at the end of the night, and then people would like it more and more, so I'd play it longer. But I was playing soul and hip hop at the beginning of the night to get people in the mood to buy drinks and all that stuff you had to do. But it gradually took over more and more and became more techno.
Did you go to any of these big like summer love raves? Like
I didn't have a car.
And you were in Brighton at this time, right?
Yeah, I was in Brighton, so I didn't have a car. I didn't have the ability to go. I wasn't in the network of going to the petrol stations to find out where these raves were. Stearns was really annoying to me because my father used to work there, and I used to skateboard down that hill as a kid, and I never got invited there. That kind of sucked. But, but then eventually I had the records out, and then the records changed everything, because then people thought, okay, rightly or wrongly, this guy's making interesting records. He must be a DJ, which doesn't always make sense.
And so into 1990, you did the 2 records on XL, then the R&S record, and then 91 really became the big thing in techno with the rave sound and the T99 and Dominator and all these big huge hits. James Brown is Dead. And you didn't really produce a lot of stuff in that year. You kind of came more the next year.
I did a little bit, but it wasn't sort of my best work, so we don't talk about it. I was still exploring who I was, looking at my past influences, trying to work out how to integrate them, but to be me, but couldn't quite work it out yet. And then around, I think, 92, I started Magnetic North A&Ring and the concept of it to come up with like really, really cool music. And then I found Christian Vogel, who was actually, weirdly enough, in the same room at Sussex University that I had a 7-day course because I was expelled from school. I don't know if you know what expelled is.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So I was expelled from school and I was supposed to leave school and do computer software and AI, but I couldn't get in for whatever reasons, family stuff, whatever. So there was a sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? Sort of like a balance of like, okay, well, you know, you can go to this Sussex University for like a 6-day course in electronic music. And I was taught by Mick Parker, who did he worked with Morikante, you know, the Afro Acid one, which Jeff did the bass line from, the dun, 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 dun. And so I actually learned a lot from him. He had lots of Yamaha stuff again, so I already knew how that worked. So I found Christian Vogel actually in the same round building where I actually did a 5 or 6 day course of electronic music. So that was kind of fun. And then I released a lot of stuff also under different pseudonyms because I wasn't sure who I was yet. So like Graphite, Autonique. Autonique was a little bit of a funny one because Luke did a project called Clementine, and I had to look up what Clementine was and found out it was a citric fruit. So I thought, I'm going to find a citric fruit that's even less well known than Clementine. So I came up with Autonique.
I remember both of them, the Clementine, of course, and this.
Yeah. So it was just a little bit of funny stuff because I used to work with Luke in Jelly Jam Records as well. It was his shop.
I mean, you did one record with Luke. Not a lot of people know about that on Jelly Jam.
I don't think I was named on that at the time.
I don't know if you guys did the track together, but I know.
Yeah, we went to the studio, but you know, it was beginning times and whatever. You know, at the time it seemed like a really fucking big thing that I wasn't named or whatever. I don't know what happened, but it doesn't matter at all now. You know, it's like benefit of hindsight. But you know, like Luke was DJing quite a lot, and you know, Jelly Jam was a fucking cool record shop.
That was a shop also.
Yeah, it was really important, and that was actually above the place where one of the guys who had a clothes shop down there, I can't remember what it's called, but he was the one that first put me into a studio in Guildford. So it was all very, very linked. And like my friend just lived across the road, who's still my friend to this day, who did the keyboards on Miles Away, Bailey. So it was all really, really linked. And like all the music that came in, I remember getting some really cool music. And then at that time I was reviewing for Mixmag and writing pieces in Generator magazine.
That, yeah.
And that was my way of getting promos before everyone. So I had, because now, of course, you can get music anywhere and easily, but in those days it was difficult. And if I got the promos before people and I could actually make my sound with that, then that was kind of cool. And I remember this track that came out, which no one ever tell me what it was. It was like Psychic Driver. And it's like, I'm the Psychic Driver. I really now to this day believe that it could have been like a blueprint, maybe like a weird white label from maybe Keith or something, because it sounded so similar to Fast Starter that came out a few years later.
And you never tried to figure it out on Discogs?
No, not at all.
Psychic Driver.
It's like, I'm the Psychic Driver, and it's really like I'm the Fire Starter. It just felt very similar. And of course, being a Luke shop was really, really cool because you could also get loads of records that weren't coming anywhere else. So I managed to get the There Is No Planet Earth from Claude and Daniel,
yeah, of course.
On green vinyl.
You got the green one. I got the blue one.
No, I got the green vinyl. And then the green one, that came in, and there was like only 5, and the weird back to front ones of Acacia, Kelly Hand, Ready for the Darkness from Technostica. All that stuff was coming in there. So it was like so cool to be there and really important because, Luke did a really fucking cool record shop. I only ever got really paid in sandwiches, but that was fine. What else do you need? Sandwiches and records is enough, right? And then, 90s came, Magnetic North, and then I started making, so Tony used to work at Jelly Jam Records, and then he worked on other records, and he played The Light from Felix the Housecat, and then I really loved it, and I got in contact with the record label Bush, who did tell me at the time, I didn't see it as a warning, but they did tell me at the time, and you might need to bleep this bit out, but they did tell me at the time that Bush is another word for cunt. And I didn't realize why they called their record label cunt till maybe later. So I did the remix, which went down really, really well. And I even managed to call it In the Dark We Live.
I mean, that's a staple. That's how I met you. I met you doing this.
Well, I remember going to the Slimelight and DJ Kyoki actually kissed my fucking hand. I think you were with me.
I was there. And it was crazy because back then, you were playing in the small room. Like, you were not really you were playing in the small room in the Slimelight in '93. Like, you didn't step up to the big league yet. But when you did this record, that record blew you up. That was the record. I mean, that was probably one of the biggest records of '93.
Kyoki worked with Delight, right? I think.
No, that's Dimitri from
Okay,
Delight.
well, Kyoki was like the Slimelight main attraction, I think, right?
Okay, yeah.
And then he just kissed my hand. I was like, what's going on here? And then it appeared on another American label. I think Junior Vasquez was playing it. It just crossed over.
It was fucking huge.
Everything.
This was like one of the biggest records.
Well, I was told it only sold a couple of hundred, but there you go. Hey, the good old days before Junior.
Well, it was a remix, so you're not supposed to get paid for the full
No, I
thing,
know,
right?
but there's no reason in not sharing the joy.
No, of course.
You know, I mean, I got paid in a DAT machine that got taken back from me. So brilliant. And then, but because of the popularity of that record of selling 300 copies, I managed to get the deal for 3 Reds. And because I was at that point quite tired of moving different projects and different names across different labels, I then thought, okay, if we do this, I need you to commit to it. So I had to say Red 1 of 3, so that I've definitely got a 3 single deal. And that's what it was about. It's about getting the commitment to actually just build a solid base.
I mean, these were some of the most important records of the '90s. They were really cutting edges for us in production at that time. Nobody had a production on it. Nobody had kick drums that sounded like that at that time period. How did you do that?
Well, everyone sampled them afterwards, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's everybody. I can actually recall doing it too. I think everybody did. I mean, how did you make those kick drums at that time?
There's sometimes three or four different kick drums patched together. I mean, I never had like a 909 drum machine. I never really cared about it. I would sample them, but then do loads of different things with all the drums and do it like that. And then I had this, because I was really interested in weird things like compressors. Like, everything sounds normal now, like a compressor, because, you know, you can go online. What does a compressor do? Side chaining, all that stuff. Everything's there online. But in those days, it just wasn't. So I had to read magazines like Sound on Sound, which I actually eventually wrote for a little bit, like 2 years ago. And it's still a magazine now, so that's great for it. But they never really talked about electronic music in those days. It was always like, so what's Roger Waters and Pink Floyd doing these days? And what's going on here? And how was this recorded? And that was really, really interesting, but it didn't bear too much resemblance to what I was doing, but it was really, really interesting. So I'd read all the reviews about the quadriverb, the midi-verb, and the compressor. And then I found this, at that time was expensive to me, but now really cheap, was the Alessi 3630 compressor. And I just worked with my ears, and it just sounded fat as fuck. And so I just played with this, and then I was backstage at the Rex in the mid-90s, and Thomas Bancoulter came up to me and said, "So Dave, what is this compressor that you're using on your records? They are so loud." And I said, the Alessi 3630. And then all of a sudden, every other record for them for like 3 years was using that bloody compressor. But it's cool because, I mean, I was doing interviews in Generator Mag with people like Felix the Housecat, other artists too, kind of secretly find out how they produce records, because the beauty of in those days is everyone's record sounded different. You know,
that's true.
Kelly Hand would come out with Get Ready for the Darkness, right? Gary Martin would come out with like some weird fucking lion screaming shit with tribal beats. And it sounded so fucking weird and loosely quantized. Suburban Night would come out with a dum, 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 and then all of a sudden you think, oh, that's where the bass drum, and then it goes, no, it's the other way around. The bass drum comes in, the offbeat comes in the other time round. So everyone had their own weird way of producing. So it was an exciting, you know, Reese Funky Funk. Funk was like fucking weird.
Yeah, that was a really strange track.
Really fucking strange, you know, like Kevin Saunderson, I massively respected for like that weird shit that he used to do. And then you had Nitzareb, which was produced by Phil Harding, which produced like all the stock Aikman and Waterman stuff, and they would go there late at night and use the same settings, but come out with, you know, Let Your Body Learn and stuff like this. So everyone's story was completely different, which meant everyone's record was completely different, which meant there was far more scope to be imaginative than now, where, you know, yesterday and today I was listening to promos and 80% of them sound like it's the same production technique through and through. There isn't really, and so what they make up in lack of imagination, they make up for in tempo, they think, but they don't. But everyone's records were different, so it gave you that ability to just try different shit and get away with it, and that's exactly what we were all doing.
And stylistically, things moved really quick back then. It could move in 6 months, it'd be a whole different style of techno coming out, right? It's constantly innovation, and it's a really exciting time, and I find myself being a lot more nostalgic lately with it, because when I go back and I listen to this stuff, I'm like, wow, this stuff is actually timeless. Like, when we were doing this back then and we were listening to it, it was like a timestamp on it. If a record was out for 3-4 months, it was like old news.
I disagree.
You don't think people?
I disagree, because I honestly now, I think most DJs play a record for maybe a month, unless it's amazing. Like, it's just filler a lot of the time for techno, for these big techno raves. It's just filler. Whereas a lot of people would play records for a year and a half, 2 years. Like, if they were good records, or longer, you know, like Daniel Bell stuff, you'd play that for years.
Oh, that's true. I mean, it would go on, but after a while, then people would really stop playing it, and the music just seemed like it was moving to the next step.
No, I disagree. I think maybe it was different in the UK, perhaps. You know, like when Jack's Upbeats came up. Jack's Upbeats was massively important because he got artists paid for the first time, I think, and actually respected, like Nocturnal Behavior by Claude Young when that came out. Of course, it was on blue vinyl. It was amazing. When some of the stuff on Relief came out, it was all different, but it would last for a long time, because, you know, I could only carry 90 records with me because I'd be carrying them on planes and want them as hand luggage. And you would carry your records really carefully because the tracks had an identity that you had an identity with. And you'd change maybe 10 records every sort of 3 months. I
agree with that. I mean, but when I had the shop, I also noticed that people weren't really like trying to buy, like if you did stuff in 1993, like Magnetic North stuff, by 94, Mills, Minimal Nation, the sound completely changed. By 95, it was Surgeon, Neil Landstrom, you know, you were on the Red 3.
I see. It was all very
similar. People were not really playing the 93 stuff anymore. People were not interested in going back a year or two like they do now. Like, records have much more longevity on the shelves now than they did back then. The records would turn over very quick in the shop.
I think it's completely the inverse. Completely the inverse. I see it completely opposite to that. I mean, maybe customers are a bit more fickle and they go, you know, 93 is old news, fuck it. But I think a lot of DJs, you know, we had our sound, which we'd honed, and each sound that we had from each of those records, each one of those records took such a long time for the person to become top of their craft. And a lot of those records were vitally important for a long, long time. And every DJ had their own sound with those records that they would play for a long time. And then some people would miss things like Digital Holophonic Sound, you know, the House of God. Some people would miss, I mean, I've still got the original with the black and white cover, but some people would miss that stuff and then they come back at it later on. Through people like Surgeon doing a remix, for example, or naming the club after
Right, that was like in 96,
But no, I honestly think it was completely I think music now has the shortest shelf life you could ever imagine because people have ADHD when it comes to remembering stuff. It's like, oh, what's that? Oh, cat. Yeah, cat. Let's talk about the cat. Oh, look, there's another cat over there. And their mind is completely gone, whereas people's minds was much more strong because the music had a stronger identity. Electro still carries, to this day, a long longevity compared to 80% of the techno, well, what's called techno.
But I was going to say techno, like the old stuff from back in the day, is definitely timeless music. I don't know if we really looked at music as being super timeless back then in the 90s. Like, you really think people would be playing the same stuff today? Like,
I don't know. I didn't think of it like that because I don't think ahead like that in that way. But I even thought that some of the new beat stuff was timeless. Just the wrong BPM, but it was pretty timeless.
Oh yeah, I mean, of course. I mean, I always found myself going back and listening to the whole time bass and bleeps. I always loved that era of techno, and even in the late 90s, I'd be listening to it, or even when I was doing my industrial thing in the early 2000s into the teen decade, I still always ventured back to that stuff because I still love it.
Yeah.
And to me, it's timeless stuff. But the more that techno is going on now, it really seems much more timeless than it ever has.
Oh, you mean the old techno?
Yeah, the old stuff. Yeah.
Oh,
I mean, it's like the blueprint.
I thought
like
you meant the
blueprint.
promos that came in this week.
Yeah, no. I mean, I still get good music. I think there's a lot of good music that comes out. I find, for me personally, I don't find a lot of great new music to play out at the peak time at the moment, but there's a lot of good music in many different styles of electronic music right now. You know, like a lot of people actually can duplicate the older styles and make them sound really, really good. Like, you know, there's people that do bass and bleep stuff now that actually do it really well. I'm like, that sounds pretty authentic. You know?
I remember, like, do you remember Juno? That was like early bass and bleeps.
Yeah,
from
the
Sheffield.
Soul Thunder.
Yeah,
I love that. Oh, it's classic.
I know.
I'm just always a fanatic for all that.
And then
stuff.
there was Cat Records, CATT
yeah,
Records.
this label's hot right now. They're reissuing a lot of stuff on this label.
I saw that
right
on Vinyl
now,
Underground, but yeah.
No, like people didn't even know this label back, and this was like a really obscure label, especially in America.
Okay.
No, people in America really didn't know this label back in the day. And the records are pretty obscure, but now there's a scene for this stuff. You know, it's actually cool to see that the younger people are really paying attention to the older stuff, and they're learning their history. If you go on Discogs now, a lot of the old records from the early '90s, throughout the '90s, a lot of them are worth a lot of money, $100, $150 a record. It wasn't like that 10 years ago.
Okay.
You know, so I think, you know, there's a 30-year cycle, like Jeff Mills stated back in the day. You know, like 10 years ago, Italo was really hot from the 80s. Now we're in the 90s, 30 years back, right? So
well, apparently trance is really hot. Hi.
Well.
Mic drop. I don't know, damage your mic.
But yeah, you know, back to your music production. When I first met you in '93, you had a Roland JD800, right? Didn't you have a
I did.
You were really into this
Sysx, system exclusive.
Yeah. You were like really.
Well, that's the whole.
You were like really nerdy with this stuff, more than a lot of people I knew.
Well,
like,
that's the whole thing. So even though I had all these amazing, faders and stuff like that, it wasn't enough control. Because you could actually adjust it in real time. So what I did was I looked at the Sysx commands, and that's why fly-by-wire is called Alkaline 3DH, because 3DH are the last locator numbers of the JD800 in Sysx. And I was really, really interested in Sysx. The only thing that let Sysx down in those days was the zipper noise, because the definition of the fader, I think, only had a value of 128. And with 128, it sounds a lot, but when you're doing things like a reverb or something weird, you can hear that click. So I used to time that click to the beat so that you didn't hear the click and get it to move with the beat. But on filter stuff, you could ultimately really control the filter. Obviously now you just draw it in. It's fine. It's no problem. But before it was like you'd either have to do it live, but I wanted to automate it back then. So I did with System Exclusive.
Yeah, you were definitely ahead of the curve on a lot of people on that. I remember you were like really, really deep into this at this time. And
yeah, well, I love computer programming. It's fun.
And so where do you find yourself now with music? Are you making stuff a lot nowadays?
I am. I'm not making techno at all. I think the very last techno thing I did was more techno punk, which was a remix of Arnold Robertini. But I've finished like about a year ago a classical album, neoclassical album, featuring live violins and cellos and everything like that. Looking for a home for that right now. Working on some other stuff. And
do you find yourself digging into new technology with the music?
Oh yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, like computer power, like I just upgraded my computer, and the last one I had was a beast, and this one's 7 times more powerful than the last one, which was like fucking crazy, you know? I mean, like I could have like maybe 300 or 400 plugins working simultaneously without having to freeze it on the last one, and this computer is 7 times more powerful. So
What about sampling? I mean, I know that's so taboo these days. I'm kidding.
Well, I don't.
But it is. It's an interesting conversation because, if you sample somebody nowadays, that's like really, really taboo. But we were talking about in our early days that was the norm, actually, right? Like,
especially with your brother, apparently.
Yeah, he was the master, the king.
Yeah.
Todd Terry also, right?
I seem to remember a whole one of my records appearing on Sonic Groove as a 5-minute sample. That was interesting.
He was good at that, wasn't he?
Apparently so, yeah. Anyway, no, I mean, I have hours of sampling. I mean, I have like 36 terabyte of hard drive in my computer. But the thing is, actually, if you want to do sampling now, which doesn't interest me at all, because I think I sampled in the beginning, like in the 80s and 90s, because I didn't know how to make that stuff. And of course, vocals were fun. Now I can work with vocalists. And now I don't really have any political statement to make through other people's music, because I grew up with hip hop, and what hip hop did was teach you that you can change music just through 2 decks, and you can make it your own. And I really was inspired by that with Cool DJ Herc and Red Alert, Marley Marl, Chuck Chill Out. All those people really, really inspired me with the DIY attitude of doing stuff and making it sound so unique and your own. It was really interesting. Now I can do stuff that's my own. So sampling is not, but it's really interesting because the thing is, like, a lot of things that weren't available then, like acapellas or maybe a drum loop or maybe a bass line, because it's embedded in a record, you can just break that out in Serato stems. Of course, there's phase alignment issues, but you can get through that, and it's usable and it's workable. So, if there's like a part of a record that you liked, everything is available now.
Right. I mean, I like to make edits and stuff when I play out. Make a lot of edits of like old stuff.
No, that's different when you play out. But if you're making music and claiming it as your own, and you're sampling, like the technology now, if you want to go down that route, which I actually have no interest in doing, is amazing. It's unlimited. It's only limited by your lawyer and your imagination.
Sure.
Yeah.
So when did you get into the radio thing? Because I don't remember you doing radio when we met.
When I was a kid.
So
when I was a kid, I actually had Dave's Disco, which basically revolved around my bedroom being covered in tinfoil. Not because I thought, as most Americans, I'm going to be abducted by an alien, but because it reflected disco lights, and my disco lights were actually my battery-powered lights from my father's car. Which he didn't know were taken, because obviously if he had an emergency and broken down, he would have been in trouble. But I had all these flashing lights in Dave's Disco, and I had a microphone on a mono record deck, and I had a train that was given to me by my grandparents when I was a kid, and it had like a little light at the end, and I realized that the little light would work with a battery. It was green, not red, unfortunately. I put the light through the keyhole, blue tacked it through, run the wires through, and then I had a massive amount of blue tack on the back, and then I put a battery on there, and then when that light was on, everyone was forbidden from doing that because it would affect my recording.
You had to have the lights on air, right?
But that was my version of light on air. It was a green light.
I know.
And it was like, stay the fuck away, Dave is doing his radio show. And I think I was about 10 at the time. And I'll be doing that, and then I would record the adverts off the radio, put them together to make it sound like it was my radio show, and I was sponsored by car manufacturers like, anyway, so this one's by Bow Wow Wow, and then it goes straight afterwards into an advert from Porsche or whatever. So it just sounded absolutely legit, at least to my ears. So I was always practicing and doing that. And then radio first started with me through festival radio in Brighton, which was in the 90s. And they gave me a chance, and I did my radio show there. I even interviewed loads of artists, including Richie Hawtin, actually, who was the least favorite interview that I did. But anyway, just saying, a lot of the other guys were really kind and nice, and really enjoyed it. Even had Captain Sensible from The Damned in there, which was amazing. And I was really finding myself. I just remember he's trying not to laugh. You can laugh at the camera.
No, I guess I'm gonna ask you the question, the infamous Richie Hawtin story.
Well, it's not important. Yeah, it was like fun. I was playing stuff like Mescalinum United, Sulfurex, really hard music on radio, and it felt like I was cheating the system. I was like, finally I was getting this music on radio. I even used to bring my sound system into the radio studio. So I had bass bins in there.
Was this a legitimate radio station?
Yeah, it's legitimate. Radio? No, it's legitimate. It was like on for a month. That's why it's called Festival Radio for the Brighton Festival.
Okay.
And I even brought my sound system in that I had to take around to clubs because I didn't have a sound system in those days. You really had a mobile disco with you. You bring everything. And so I had like all these bass bins in there, like 15-inch bass bins to a fucking radio station, right? Like 10-inch and 15-inch and 12-inch tweeters, the whole thing, like thousands of watts for a radio station. I played it so loud that my dog shat himself in the studio. Poor thing. His name was Tech.
I think I remember the dog, right? Wasn't he like a big dog?
A Weimaraner. So his name was Tech. I called him Tech because every time he put his nose in your bollocks, right? He did that to everyone. Like I used to bring him into Jelly Jam, and like sometimes someone would come in and go "Vroom," like that. I was like, "Good boy, Tech," and like everyone go. Oh. But I used to call him Tech. So when he was doing anything wrong, I go Tech, no. True story. Absolutely true story. I had another dog which was a Mastiff. I called it Devo, and I had another dog called a Boxer. Are you ready for this? Check out his facial expression in a minute. I called the Boxer Bang. Bang the Boxer. If only Matt Warren, because obviously Matt Warren was the original that did Bang the Box. If only Matt Warren actually could have heard that, that'd been quite. I wanted to get another boxer and call it Olofsson, so I could have had Bang and Olofsson. But anyway, I lost my track there because I was going about dogs. What we were talking about? So the dog shat himself in the studio because of the bass. The smell was fucking horrendous, but the show must go on. We're professionals here. And then the police came in thinking it was an illegal rave because there was so much. It was in an old college in the basement, not residential, but the police came was like thinking there's an illegal rave because there were loads of them in Brighton in those days. Came into the room just after the dog had shat itself. I just wonder what the policeman was thinking, what the fuck was going on here. Like super loud music, live radio, and a dog that shat himself. I mean, it's just classic, right?
I remember the dog because I think the first time that I met you, I actually came to your house with maybe even with Heather, if I remember correctly. I don't remember if I came myself.
I think it would have been
like 93
in Brighton. I think it would have been Marine Parade going,
and that would be that dog. I think
going downstairs, and that dog was very special. My dog brother, miss him to this day. And he was well looked after. That was just a one shitting incident because of sub bass. I hit the brown note with my dog. I never even knew that was possible. It was horrendous. I still can smell it actually, even though it's burnt into my sinuses. Radio meant a lot to me. And then Festival Radio then had a slot up in London, in Tin Pan Alley in Denmark Street. And so I could go up there and do radio. And it sort of got around that I could do radio, which, I wasn't that good at it. The music I really enjoy, but presentation, I sounded like a chipmunk, I think. And then eventually I sort of did things like the Essential Mix, and that really got traction. And then I was asked to step in to do some special shows called The Truth on BBC Radio 1. And then I was apparently on the substitutes bench. And then Annie Nightingale had an accident in Cuba, and I took over for 13 weeks. And then I was asked by a producer, I think called Wendy, if I wanted to take over John Peel's show, which I never would want to do. I don't know how serious it was, but it was something I could never consider. And then the whole radio thing sort of finished at Radio 1. I wasn't on the substitutes bench anymore because I honestly remember a quote from Pete Tong saying that there is no need for a techno radio show on BBC Radio 1. And at the time, it was really hurtful to hear that because I thought, you're just squashing a whole music scene for whatever reason, I don't know. And it hurt me. But I think actually being on BBC Radio 1 would have been cool for a while, but I don't think it would have done me very good for an international career because at that time you always had to be in the studio to record it. And I remember driving down after Atomic Jam, just making it in time to do the radio show, for example, my schedule being booked around my radio show. And then I thought, okay, well, radio doesn't just have to be in one country. So I did this show called Technology, which was based through my festival radio people. And it was on internet, but it was also broadcast on a variety of different FM stations and syndicated at the time.
What years was this? Like later 90s, 97, 98?
Yeah, it finished around 2002. So maybe 98 to 2002, or maybe even earlier. And it got like 800,000 unique clicks on the website every week at some point, or every month. But it was a large amount. And it was impressive in those days because it wasn't fake Instagram followers. It was real fucking clicks.
I mean, is it harder now to do radio because everybody's on Spotify and they can listen to what they want when they want?
No.
Or does radio still has the power that it did back then?
Well, that's two different questions in a way. So, I mean, I finished doing technology because I had to do devil's advocate, but then I really missed doing radio. So I stepped back at it, and then VPRO asked me to do a radio show over here, and then I syndicated it back to Studio Brussels and 2FM in Ireland. And I stayed on 3FM here for like 7 years, I think. But then I kept it on 2FM, and 2FM has been my home broadcasting station for white noise and also for my alternative radio show Saga, which I really, really love doing. Like, I really enjoy it because it's my alternative side. So going back to your thing is like radio is more difficult now or more easy now. Like in some ways, yeah, radio doesn't have the power that it used to have. It just doesn't. It's impossible because before it'd be on FM and that would be the only way that you could do it, or maybe via satellite. And now, of course, everyone has unlimited data on their phone and they can listen to whatever they like, whenever they like, wherever they are, including in the car, by the way, because even cars now can do that without having to listen to FM. So, of course, then everything becomes fragmented and people become sort of in their own little zones of what they want to listen to. But at the same time, you know, white noise has now been going on for almost 20 years, like continuously, every single week, almost every single week for 20 years, coming up to episode 1,000 very, very soon, every fucking week for 20 years. And I do this for pure love of breaking out new music, and the joy that it gives the people that make the music and the joy that it gives the people that find this music. So I do it from the heart. I don't know how the figures are compared to 10, 20 years ago, but I can imagine they're less than what they are because that's just the way it is. But at the same time, I think it's split more in different countries than what it ever could have been. So that's also a positive. And then with Saga, I do that every 2 weeks, and I've done that now for 4 years. And yeah, I get a lot of feedback from the radio shows. So people still listen. And they listen on radio as well because it's broadcast in Australia on Kiss FM as well. And people still write, hey, loved your show, heard it the other day. And so it still matters. But, you know, FM broadcast is finished. It's done, you know, unless there's like, you know, some problem with the internet goes down or something. It's finished. It's not an important thing anymore. Getting a license, I think, is a waste of money now for a large amount of new stations coming through. If you got like a heritage station that people tune in all the time, that's great. I listen to radio a lot because I like the randomness of radio. So in my house, I have like different radio stations in different rooms. That's how bizarre it is. I sort of get that from my grandma that she had the radio on all the time.
Sounds like my mother.
Yeah, exactly. But
my mother's got a radio playing in every room, something different. I'm like, oh, there. I'm like, what the hell is going on here?
But the thing is, the reason why I do it is not because of loneliness or wanting to hear the fishing forecast for weather. It's because I really like that ability of just dropping into a place, you know, what's this piece of music? Or, Jesus, why is BBC Radio 6 playing dance music during the day? This is really annoying. And then changing channel. And then coming back to BBC Radio 6 in the evening and then finding, like today I heard a Leonard Cohen track that I'd never heard before. And I was like sitting there mesmerized. So radio to me still has that power of like either being annoyed or being complete. You can't be nonplussed. I can't be nonplussed like, oh, it's okay. It's either really annoying or really brilliant and you didn't know it and suckers you in. So I have a radio on in every room all the time. Like people think, what the fuck is wrong with you?
I mean, I got to commend you that you've been doing it this long, you know, and that you're still fighting for the music. And
yeah, of
and
course.
It's,
absolutely. And it was rather cool because like I've got an Essential Mix coming out this weekend on BBC Radio 1. That was from June 1994. And people are starting to go, wow, you really supported the second wave of Detroit. They see the track listing and they understand the historical perspective of that now. Because a lot of people well, people like Luke were, of course, Surgeon were, but a lot of people weren't. A lot of the more commercial DJs were still playing whatever they would get, like CNC Music Factory, which is not a go against CNC Music Factory, but they would play that, or I Want to Make You Sweat, you know, and stuff like that. They would play that, or Snap, which is a great pop tune.
Yeah,
but they would,
great.
but they would claim to be credible, whilst maybe playing like one Mike Dunn track, and that was it. That was their token. And then there were other DJs, like I said, like Luke, that would, you know, really go down this rabbit hole of finding this stuff as well. And a lot of those people that I looked up to then are still doing their thing now. So I don't know if there was something in the water at the time, or some weird militant faction that we were all part of just believing in the music, but they're still doing it, and I still respect them. And, you know, you have like the slightly newer wave, like people like Inigo Kennedy still doing their stuff and sounding amazing. James Ruskin still doing his stuff and sounding amazing, you know. And there were a lot of fucking great female DJs, by the way, at the time, which none of us gave them a hard time, at least the good people that I know. And what upsets me is that some of the newer female DJs never give the older female DJs any credit at all.
Yeah, there were a lot of great women DJs back then. Brenda Russells, Miss Djax, Electric Indigo, Heather Hart, Hand.
Heather up in Chicago as well.
Yeah, the other Heather, right.
I mean, there's loads of, and they were fucking technically brilliant.
And they didn't have any problems playing. Nobody, they were respected as much as everybody else.
But I don't understand why they're not name checked.
No, I don't. It's
because we all name check all the time, but I don't understand why the newer generation. They must have been inspired by them.
I mean, Miss Djax ran probably one of the best techno labels of ever.
Yes,
right. I mean,
well, she balanced the books when there was an unfair situation where some of these great artists didn't get the exposure they deserved, and she did that, and she was a great fucking DJ, still is.
Yes.
I mean, plays a different style of music to what I like now, but I respect her massively. So many fucking K-Hand, so many fucking cool producers and DJs, and I don't understand why they're not name checked by the newer generation of female DJs that are coming through. Maybe we should ask you, actually. The hidden person behind the camera.
We have the hidden person behind the camera, Ken.
Yeah, because it doesn't add up. Because, you know, like people that come along now, who do you like? Some might mention me, some might mention Jeff, some might mention you, other people, and it's not a problem. But I never hear some of the female DJs that are coming up now, right now, that go, "Oh yeah, Monica Cruz." You know, no one. Gal San, no one. I don't get it. I'm name checking them. It's not a problem for me because they're fucking great.
That's why we're doing this.
Yeah,
we got to get the people. We got to get their props that you know, that paved the way.
Yeah,
you know, because
I think
there's a history. It's very important, and with when any type of music that's happening, you have to know the history. It's like
I don't think
history
just
doesn't start yesterday. You know,
I don't think history is so important now for some of the newer generations. They just step on. And that's also okay. I know this is going to be controversial because, I mean, I don't want to be a couple of talking heads here going, fucking hell, old days, not as good anymore. Because who wants to watch that shit? When I grew up, okay, I was coming out the back of Deep Purple, Whitesnake, Pink Floyd, all of that stuff of obviously musicians that knew their craft. Emerson, Lake and Palmer. They obviously knew their craft. But punk came along and said, fuck that shit. People couldn't really play. They can now, the ones that survived, but they couldn't really play. And it was just exciting. And it got a whole new load of people involved. And I think that, yes, it's sad that if you don't know your history, but sometimes a seismic change is not that bad. Because punk didn't last very long, but it changed a lot of things. And we end up with New Wave after that. And fucking New Wave is incredible. So it's not all bad. I just wish that people, you know, would understand history more than just looking at Instagram and buying fake likes, doing the effects knob twists and going like this and looking like they're just constipated, and doing weird shit like that, and doing I think I only knew that dance when they were actually in Hawaii. When it's Hawaii 5-0, when they got off the plane, they're like da 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 da. What the fuck is that about?
Yeah, I agree. And the thing is that the passion that we have for this is the same as it was from the beginning.
Yeah.
There's no age on this. And the fact of the matter is the music is really the same. It's not changed that much. If you look back from the point when we first got into techno, when we were playing techno in 89, 90, whatever, in this period, how much has the music really changed other than production techniques? Not really much.
It has. It's changed massively because there's a lot more of it.
Well, there's more of it, but stylistically, it's still the same loops. It's still the same foundation is still there. It's not like when dubstep came out, 15 years ago. This was completely different than everything that.
Yeah,
was techno,
it's fall to the floor. It's grungy.
If I go and play, if somebody plays Red 3 at a club right now, kids are not going to know that this is an old record if they don't know it, right? I mean, they could think it's a brand new record.
But I'm going to play devil's advocate, and that is that the music isn't like across the board because there's so much of it now. The music isn't as adventurous or challenging as it was. It's safety in numbers. So someone's had a track that make it sound very similar, maybe subconsciously, maybe even not wanting to do it. Whereas before everything sounded different and that made it interesting. So yeah, of course it's you can analyze it in quantization, you can analyze it even in BPMs. It's fall to the floor. But, like the BPM thing, that's an interesting thing as well. Because, I don't play Awakenings anymore, my own choice. And when I did play Awakenings, I played Eindhoven and I was playing 137 BPM. And then the guy comes up to me, I'm not going to name the name, but the guy, he comes up to me and basically goes, too fast. And they're getting people to play 165 BPM there now. So it's like,
yeah, of course. This is. I don't get the trend thing with techno. Sometimes I just do what I do. I'm not trying to follow what other people do. I didn't give in and play this 150 game or 140 game because we already did this back in '93. I don't need to go back to that. We did this 160. Right.
I did play the game with Blow on actually, just for fun. Because I played after him in Dublin and he left me at 155 BPM, which is fun because actually nothing phases me, right? When we've come through the ability of playing reggae into hip hop, into funk and soul, into disco, into techno, back into electro, into jit, and then half speed again, whatever, And he didn't do it to fuck me over. He just did it to play. So when I played, I just came out of hospital and I was playing in Tilburg, 3 days later. I just thought, I'm going to be naughty. So I left him with 162 BPM just for fun, Because actually these are, the thing that I hate the most, right, in that situation is like, so Dave, what BPM do you want me to finish at?
That's probably the cringiest thing that people ask me. And then I told one dude, I said, don't worry about it. And I meant it honestly, don't worry about it. It's not a problem. And the guy got offended because he thought I was being a dick about it, right? And I was like, I'm not being a dick. I had to say, no, I mean, don't worry about it. You do you, just play what you got to play. I'm fine. I can do what I got to do,
But then the worst thing is when you're playing maybe sort of, I don't know, at 1 o'clock or something or 2 o'clock. And the warm-up DJ, has been cooking the chicken at 160 degrees Fahrenheit for 3 hours and everyone's dead.
I had a friend from New York, non-DJ, playing in Berlin at a party. I don't want to say because I don't want to make the person that played before him. But exactly what you said, and my friend walked in the plane and was like, "What the fuck is this? How is this person playing 160 as a warm-up set, and I play 135, and I have to go on after this? This is do
you know what it reminds me of?
Not cool.
Do you know what it reminds me of? It's the party when we did a little road trip, the photo that you found of all three of us on the road, when we did the little road trip to Drop Bass Network.
Okay, yeah, of course I remember that.
Fuck. And I was really worried.
Who won the pillow fight, by the way?
Yeah, but I sat on your head in Detroit Music Festival and kept you quiet for 10 minutes, so I won it back. Not that I'm competitive, but anyway, but we're in this fucked up motel, right?
Yeah.
I remember
that was like the Norman Bates motel on Psycho.
This is Adam saying, I've got you a really nice motel, man. It's going to be really fucking good. And I'm in here, I haven't seen Brown Draylon since I flew a Piper airplane from 1965 that was originally fitted out with the same avionics. I haven't seen Brown Draylon since that circumstance, right? brown Draylon. I'm so glad I didn't have a UV light because there would have been sperm everywhere. It was a fucking horrible fucking place. It was like, it just would have looked like amoeba splats everywhere if I'd had, and a TV that, fuck knows, I think it had $50 or more. The House of God. Stayed there and I thought, what the fuck have I lined myself up for? What the fuck? No one else even was staying there, you know? Everyone else was like, no, I'm all right, thanks. I think I'll sleep in my car if I run out of petrol. Straight on. No, you arranged it that we stay here, right?
Oh, so, I didn't arrange it. That's
sure.
That's our buddy Kurt X from Shop.
Sure.
Well, I actually spoke to him
Sure,
today.
you told me it was all cool. Dave, I'm looking after you. You're my guest. It's all cool. I remember this. Fucking springs in the bed. Obviously, someone had been slammed hard many times.
At least there was no bed bugs.
I don't know. I think they might have even left the motel themselves. It was that bad. I think they would have actually gone on holiday. And then it was so fucking shite. And then we walk out there, and then in the evening we're going to this racetrack, drag track, drop bass network.
Yeah.
Fucking hell. 160. This is like 1994.
I would say 93. That party was called Balance. Maybe it was 94. Maybe early 94.
1994. Like everyone was like doing like 120 to 140 max, right? Like techno, you know? Like
no, it was a little bit faster.
Well, okay, Lenny D, you know, like, okay, Lenny D was like...
Did Lenny play on that one? I don't even remember.
Lenny D was the Ozzy Osbourne of techno in those days, you know, like full on. But for the majority of us Europeans, it was like 120 to 140. That was cool, it was enough. When they're fucking 160, 170 BPM, I was like, I didn't even know they made records that fast. And I was like really nervous, like, because I had to come on with like 130 BPM and it's going to sound like Soul to Soul Back to Life. It's like, and I thought I'm going to be killed here, because it was like an all white party, which I haven't been to before until my Dearborn turned up. And then when my Dearborn turned up, I gave him the biggest fucking hug because I thought, okay, it's not so bad here. It's going to be okay. It's like
I vividly remember this. Vividly.
I didn't know that he was a policeman at the time, but anyway.
He wasn't back then, no.
I wasn't, okay. But anyway, I thought if he turns up, it's actually not as bad as I'm thinking, because, you know, the motel set me up in a bad mood. And then I played and everyone went for it, and I was like really, really fucking relieved. Actually, I remember another party that you set up. It's like, Dave, come to New York, it's going to be really good. Right?
Yeah, that one didn't go that well, but that wasn't my party. I was just booking you for people, you know, getting you the gigs.
So he puts me in a hotel near the M&M building in Times Square, and I think, oh, I'm in Times Square. Normally I'm downtown, and like, I'm in Times Square. Oh, this is cool. I haven't seen a hotel like this since Colombo. Right? I honestly expected with UV light that there'd be blood all over the walls because people had obviously been shot here, right? It was the smallest fucking room I've ever been to in my life, I think. I think it was a prison
I'm
cell.
sure you've probably been in small in Japan.
No. Smallest fucking room, no air conditioning, middle of summer, a fan. I'm not sure what is blowing at me, but it's not helping, right? So I'm thinking, oh, this is really turdy. And I was like, I said, Adam, this is really shit. No, it's going to be good. The party's going to make up for it. It's going to be great. Trust me. I go to the party, right? It's in an attic, right? Within 10 minutes of me starting, the police bounce in, shut it down, right? Pushing everyone to the ground, like big donut-eating police, like pushing everyone. I'm thinking, I'm definitely in an episode of Columbo right now. This shit is just out of hand. And then they came up to me and said, you the DJ? I went, yes, I am, sir. Oh, you're English? I went, yeah. Well, you can just go down the normal stairs. I was like, fucking hell. It's like
that was for Alan's Sanctuary, this party.
Whatever, you arranged it.
That was a party. That you
told me it was good.
Oh, yeah, he did a lot of good. He did good parties.
That was not a good party. And there was,
so, you know, sometimes that was the risk you had to take back in the day.
Yeah, I realized that, but I've never seen cockroaches on top of cockroaches before. And in that hotel, those guys, one cockroach was going, "I'm not stepping on that floor because it's filthy. You do it, Fred." So, you know, John was on top of Fred because Fred was like obviously taking the risk that night of crossing the carpet. Fuck me. Seriously, fucking bad. And when the police came, I just thought, okay, this just sums it up. But I don't want to end on the bad notes that Adam has constantly got me involved in. I want to also end on some of the good things that we did, which is also like, I think we did the Bowery, or not the Bowery, where we
did later ones that were like when the scene got better in like '95 when you played the Roosevelt Island, the stadium party.
Yeah, and also there was the where do they keep ammunitions? There was the what's that building called where they used to keep ammunitions?
The Armory parties, the Armory parties. When you came the first time,
people, that's not King.com Armory. It's a different Armory, but the Armory that was amazing. But the weird thing I remember about the Armory party, I don't know why I remember so much. I think it's because I didn't do drugs. But the weird thing about the Armory party was like everyone was dressing like they were an extra in Scooby-Doo.
That wasn't the flat pants thing. Was funny.
Yeah. Everyone was dressing like it was.
Not me. We didn't dress like that. Our crew didn't dress like that. But that was the rave fashion at the time.
Do you know what? The ones with the biggest pants, they even fucking brought a picnic towel that they would put down in the middle of the dance floor and sit down in front of you. They were the ones that came up for asking for Plastic Man. That's all I'm saying.
That was the ketamine era, that was the beginning of the ketamine era.
But they look like Scooby-Doo
They would
extras.
sit there, the kids we would kick them out. Like when we were doing raves, we would tell them, like, you can't be sitting on the floor of the parties. Like, that was a thing for a minute.
Because I remember doing a party with Mike in Chicago, and those people there, and then DJ Skull came on. I think it blew their heads off. They just left.
But this was when you came in that period. The parties were good.
No,
in
they were really good.
We were having a lot of police problems in New York with the raves in like 93, 94.
They were like some of those
breaking
parties.
Up a lot
some
of
those parties that I did. And I remember like Frankie being there as well. I think he had a white Lexus or something really pikey.
Yeah. This was a good era.
And then his girlfriend or whoever it was at the time was actually first time I've ever seen someone take a piss between two cars before. That was kind of interesting as well. And oh shit, I remember Maria 909 being around there as well. She was cool.
Yeah, I liked her. We're still in touch. We talk all the time.
I haven't heard from her for ages, but she was feisty as fuck.
Oh, that's cool that you remember Maria. She's gonna love this, so she sees this.
I think she was not the second series because that was really shit, but she reminds me of the lead actress in Russian Doll. Have you seen Russian Doll?
No.
It's a time travel thing on the New York metros. She has a really gruff voice and she doesn't take shit from anyone. That's Maria. It's like, you want a pizza? I get you a pizza, and just pulls in and gets a pizza.
Yeah, Maria's still in the crew.
She's cool. So I remember the good day, and I remember also with Heather going to see Natural Born Killers.
Oh, fuck, I forgot about that.
And we went you were working.
Did I not see that with you guys?
No, you were working.
No. Didn't you guys also go like in a helicopter ride or something?
Because you were working.
Yeah.
So we went in a helicopter, went around Ellis Island.
I missed that. I've never been in a helicopter.
Yeah, we went around Ellis Island. I don't think you can do them anymore. We went around Ellis Island, Statue of Liberty, and that was fun. And then we also went to Brighton Beach where we actually saw the Natural Born Killers.
I've been to Brighton Beach in England with you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I have a lot of great memories. I also remember, what was that pizza place on Bleecker and 6th?
Joe's.
Oh, Joe's.
I never liked that pizza.
I did.
I liked I was on the other block. Phil's was better.
Joe and Phil.
Phil's was my spot.
I liked it because it's like, like $2 for a slice or something. And then, do you remember I was going through that phase of Snapple? Because I just discovered Snapple, and then I went to your country and they had like 300 flavors of it. I was like, fucking insane. Like, I've never had some. I didn't realize it's full of palm oil.
Go there now. It's even. When's the last? You haven't been in the States in a long time.
I won't go. It's done for me.
When's the last time you were there? 20 years ago?
It's a good point, actually. I don't know. Before Trump, the first time, because obviously by the time this gets videoed, it'll be the second time. Before the first time.
Got a nice scene popping up there. I could get you a nice hotel with some cockroaches and stuff.
This is the reason. Adam is the reason I don't go back. And Trump. Adam and Trump. Same sentence. Just saying. No, I got. See, it's weird because actually I didn't realize at the time, but the best agent that I actually had over there was Ronnie First, who was from Toronto. And actually, even though he was unorthodox, he really did look after me. And then I went with other agents and I wasn't very looked after. And then, I get 30% tax taken off, which is legal. But then I never got the receipts. And then all of a sudden I found out that they were charging the promoter double and I only got half and all that sort of bullshit. And then getting picked up by people that were high as fuck, getting Mike Dearborn yet again, saving me to drive me back from the club because the people that were supposed to drive me were completely slaughtered. And I just don't feel
it's not like that now. There's a lot of really, really pro promoters now.
People I mean, like, do you know Orly Gal? Orly, Orly Gal?
No.
She's like, I think from LA. She was inviting me over. I met some nice people on Clubhouse actually during the Corona things, and like when you really come over, but
there's some great promoters doing some.
I mean,
really
I
cool
think the last good gig that I did in the US was actually probably Movement. Playing after Richie, I really enjoyed playing there, and I was really well treated and well looked after.
When was that? That was, I mean, I remember when you played in the downstairs.
Maybe 2012, maybe.
Okay. Oh, so you came back then.
And I was really, really, really well looked after, and I really, really enjoyed it. But I can't really remember that many good gigs. I mean, I remember going to Miami, right? And it's like, you know, again, Scooby-Doo trousers picking me up. Yo, Dave, how you doing? Oh, yeah, cool. So, yeah, tonight you're playing in the club where they invented wearing sunglasses at night. I was like, no, you didn't. Stop. So, yeah, anyway.
So how are you with the DJing these days? You like traveling still, and you still like to do it all the time, every weekend?
It's weird. So what popped up in my feed from like 7 years ago today, Facebook, was my schedule. It's like this for like 2.5 months. Maybe 30 gigs. When I see that now, it fills me full of shudder. It's like, I can't do that kind of schedule anymore. And also, I sort of fell out of love with some of the bigger events because they're so commercial. Because it really is sort of a money hoovering device now a lot of the time. Not always, but a lot of the time. And so I try to DJ maybe 3 to 5 times a month. And it's always in Europe. I'm happy to go to Asia if that happens. Australia's too far for me now. So it's mostly Europe. I played in South Africa actually in January. That was fun, but it's the same time zone. So I can't do 7, 9 or 11 or 13 gigs in 1 month anymore. It's just, I don't want to be that person. I want to spend more time in the studio. I want to spend more time doing photography. I teach here at Harlem Conservatorium. I really enjoy the kids there. They actually give me a lot of hope about the future because they're really special kids. They're very supportive of each other. It's really beautiful to see. Very talented as well. So I'm really proud of them. And yeah, I want to do more creative stuff than traveling because I think those of us that have traveled for a long time, we know that when we come back on a Monday, it's a horrible day. And if we're lucky, we get back onto things on a Tuesday, but sometimes Tuesday is also a horrible day. And then you have Wednesday and Thursday to do things, and then Friday you're back on the road again. So I want to be more doing creative stuff in the studio, doing more photography, shooting people, shooting countries and landscapes and stuff like that, and putting together more complete projects than just like a 12-inch.
Sonic Room Podcast.